Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. For the past few days, I've been talking about a topic that how can we change? How can we follow the instructions that we are going through? How can we change practically? How can we bring the teachings and the learnings from the Quran, from the Ahadith, from the scholars, from mentors, motivational speakers, whatever we hear, whatever we listen to, whatever we are being taught? How can we bring them about in practical life? Because we are very busy, we are totally focused on learning new things, and we are totally focused on, even the best of us are probably making a lot of effort in being occupied by um, a lot of stuff that is like if they're not binge watching Netflix, and they're binge watching scholar videos, like scholarly informational videos on different topics. But are they able to implement all that in their lives? Only Allah knows if they are or not. It is not that easy, and it is very easy to get lost in this experience of binge watching things and learning new things, and not stopping to think for a moment that are we actually acting upon what we are learning or not. It can get really out of hand. So, what I'm trying to do is, because I have been observing a lot of friends and family members, and even in myself, I noticed that despite the fact that I was watching lots and lots of videos on the topic of procrastination, I was not able to give up on my procrastination. So then I started thinking, what is it actually that, what would it take for me to actually act on the things that I'm learning? What would bring me to my feet? What would get me up and tell me to act on the things that I'm learning? So we have to agree, we have to discover, we have to bring ourselves to realize that we are supposed to be conscious human beings. That God did not create us to be, just be something. We are not animals. We are conscious human beings. That's the least that is required from us. We are all conscious human beings, and we are supposed to take responsibility of all our actions, of all our deeds. We cannot take responsibility of what's thrown at us, but we can take responsibility of how we catch the thing that is thrown at us, how we react to it, how we respond to the circumstances. That is our responsibility. And the things that will be thrown at us, they will be different for different people, but they will be tests, and the responses will depend on a combination of different characteristics and traits and principles that we are supposed to follow in life. A principle of being honest, a principle of being loyal, a principle of being of good high moral character, moral values, and so on. So how do we actually realize this? How do we start taking control of our life, and how do we start becoming conscious human beings? To do that, first and foremost, we have to recognize that we are conscious human beings. There is no other way, there is no other excuse, there is no way we are going to get away with this. And we have to admit and we have to accept that we are conscious human beings indeed. And then we have to exert all the efforts that we can into learning and finding out how can we improve ourselves in every situation that meets us. How can we become better than what we were a minute ago? How can we be better than what we were yesterday? We have to constantly evolve into a better version of ourselves. We have to constantly look up to the best example of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that has been given to us. We have to evolve into something better and better and better till we meet our Lord. We have to keep growing better. We have no excuses. We have to act like conscious human beings. It is not for us conscious human beings to act like animals who fall on the smell of food, who just follow the newspaper man, or who would just run after a cat or a mouse, and not even think of the consequences, and just run at any impulse. We are not impulsive human beings. If we are impulsive, we lose our importance or the respect given to us by the Creator. We are not supposed to be impulsive human beings. We are supposed to control our impulses. We are supposed to control and snub and suppress our desires and our impulses. We are not supposed to act on impulse unless and until there is a fire and we have to have a flight response. But we have to think and consciously act under every situation. So how do we do that? I mean, there was something very, very interesting I was reading today, and that actually inspired me to make this video, because what I read is actually what is happening these days all around us. So I was reading a book about children, and especially in the teenage, and this book is talking about how when there was this king of France, and he was dethroned and he was imprisoned, and how the people who conspired against the king also tried that the prince would not become his successor, would not become in power, would not become the king. So what they did was, the king was taken away from the throne and imprisoned, and his young son, the prince, was taken by those who dethroned the king. They thought that the king's son was automatically the heir to the throne, but if they could destroy him morally, he could never realize the great and grand destiny that life had bestowed upon him. So they took him to a community far away, and there they exposed the lad to every filthy and vile thing that life could offer. They exposed him to foods, the richness of which would quickly make him a slave to appetite. They used vile language around him constantly. They exposed him to lewd and lusting women. They exposed him to dishonor and distrust. He was surrounded 24 hours a day by everything that could drag the soul of a man as low as one could slip. For over 6 months, he had this treatment, but not once did the young lad buckle under pressure. Finally, after intensive temptation, they questioned him. Why had he not submitted himself to these things? Why had he not partaken? These things would provide pleasure, satisfy his lusts, and were desirable. They were all his. The boy said, I cannot do what you ask for because I was born to be a king. Now just imagine the way that prince was exposed to so much of lewdness and so many temptations. What are the youth, not just the youth, I mean, what are the adults of these days going through? What kind of temptations that we have all around us? 24/7. Such great temptations we have. Everything, every lewd, every nude thing is available on the internet. Everything is being bombarded towards us in social media platforms, from right, left, and center. It's almost impossible to ignore it. It's almost impossible to overlook. And if we don't know our self-worth, if we don't know, I mean, how does the psyche of a prince develop to be so strong that he has been exposed to so much of immorality, and he still maintained his self-worth? He was still conscious of his self-worth. That happened because when the child is born, that is supposed to be the king, the future king, he's treated differently. He's raised up differently than the rest of the children. He has been told from a very tender age that he's going to be the king. He has to be responsible. He cannot be irresponsible like the rest of them. So he develops over the time, he develops a mentality, a sense of grandeur, a sense of greatness, of moral character, a higher ground, a sacred ground of moral character. Now we need to develop that in ourselves. We need to develop that moral value in our children. We need to develop that consciousness of self-worth, of great self-worth, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in a great form for a great destiny. We are supposed to go back to Jannah. We do not belong to this earth. And when we say Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un, that is actually in a way reminding us that we came here with a return ticket and we have to go back. So we need to, from a very young age, train our children to be kings of Jannah, to become worthy of Jannah, to know the self-worth, to know that no matter how much temptation we are faced with, we would always remember deep down within, we would always remain conscious that those things are beneath us, those things are not worthy of us, and it does not suit us to lower ourselves to those bad things, to those vile and evil things. So we need to develop this great consciousness in ourselves. And just like a muscle can be trained, this consciousness can be developed by practice. And just like somebody gets a football practice or a cricket practice, people go into these sports and they practice and practice and practice till they're perfect. We can develop this in our children, in ourselves. If we didn't have it from before, if our parents did not work on it, if our parents did not work on us, then it is our moral responsibility to become conscious human beings, because end of the day we are going in our own graves and there's no escaping it. There's simply no escaping the grave or the destiny to die, or there's no escaping God. So we have to decide, take this conscious decision, and no matter what it takes, whether it takes a 10-degree change or a 180-degree change, we have to bring it about. We have to do it, because there is no other way. There is no coming back once we die. There is no coming back to have a second chance at life. There is no way we are going to get that second chance at life. So we have to make it work the first time. This is all we have. And we have to make every moment count. And we have to not lose any time in becoming conscious human beings who have this consciousness that they are responsible for whatever comes out of their mouth, whatever action they're taking, whatever steps they're taking, whatever their hands are doing, whatever their body is doing, whatever their mind is thinking, whatever they're putting in their hearts, whatever their eyes are watching, whatever their ears are hearing. We're responsible for everything we are doing. And that is the reason why every single thing we do or say is being written, it's being noted down by the angels. They are keeping records. And Allah Ta'ala is not unaware of even a slightest bit of thing that we are thinking or doing. So there is no escaping Him, and there is no escaping the destiny that awaits us, that is in the form of death and leaving this world and going into the next life and being accountable. So we should learn from this example of the prince, that he at a tender age was exposed to 6 months of constant bombardment with temptation, and he, just because he knew his self-worth, just because he knew the higher purpose of his being, he did not give in to the temptation. And that is something we need to have in order to survive in this world filled with temptations. There is so much temptation these days, but there is hope as well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us that His help is greater than His test. So I am not losing my faith in the fact that I'm not overwhelmed, that the temptation is greater than ever before, or something like that. No. If there is temptation, Allah's help is there. Allah's help is greater. We cannot panic. What we have to do is to raise awareness, raise a generation of conscious human beings, start within our homes, raise and train our own children in our surroundings, anyone that we can reach out and have a positive effect on, we should do it. Raise our children as princes, as future kings of this ummah, who know their worth, who know their greater purpose in life and akhirah, and who know their destination. They're made for Jannah. They're not made for earth.